listening to NPR the other day, and I heard an interview of author Paula Hawkins. She's the one that wrote the book Girl in the Train. It was a huge, after many unsuccessful novels, she wrote that one. And it was a huge success, and they made a movie out of it. And she's doing the talking tour now on her second novel, or her next novel, which is entitled Into the Water. And it was interesting to me because she was describing the essence of the story, which is, not to give any part of it away, but it's a village that a river runs through and some people died. And the story is told from 15 different perspectives. And she said, I just found it really interesting to take that approach to this mystery novel because what we do as humans is remember things different ways. And by taking the different perspectives of 15 different people, the reader gets a chance to view these events from a different perspective. And just listening to her made me think about growing up in Baton Rouge and the river there, and I just kind of had this memory bubble up that I hadn't thought about in a long time. So it kind of gave rise to my talk today, which is this idea that we shouldn't believe everything we think. And I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, and I'm just going to kind of a little personal disclosure here today. But I was 8 or 9 years old. My grandfather, my step-grandfather, was a merchant marine, and he toured the world for Lights Brothers Freight Company. And he brought back for me, and this is in the 60s, a little transistor radio that was big, which was, I don't know what that's like, getting an iPad. But it was a big deal. It was aquamarine, and it was silver across the top, had 2 little silver knobs, one for volume, one for all the AM spectrum. Okay? You with me? It was cool, right? This is an amazing thing. And so what it gave me the chance to do was not only listen to local Baton Rouge music, AM stations, but I could also listen to the Houston Astros baseball. And that was a big thing. And for a kid that age, it broke down this little provincial idea that, this is just Baton Rouge. And I could listen to this voice all the way in Houston, Texas, which might have been Mars as far as I was concerned. It was that far away. But for me, knowing that Houston was out there and that the Astros baseball team was out there, and there was a guy from New Orleans named Rusty Staub who played for the Houston Astros, so I always listened so I could hear what was going on with Rusty Staub. And this particular evening, I'm lying in bed. It's probably 9:30 at night, and it's kind of stormy outside. The wind's blowing, it's drizzly. You can hear the trees outside my window blowing. And I'm listening to the game. And there's this kind of scary moment where they go, we interrupt this broadcast to go live now to, and of course, where are they going live to? And they were going live to one of the plants along the river. And there had been this huge explosion, a chemical plant. Okay? And they're interviewing people there. And the urgency of their voice kind of scared me as like a kid. And one person said, yeah, it was horrible. The flames went up 50 feet in the air. We saw people blown up, and some of them we don't think have even come down yet. And I heard that. And I'm thinking, these people could land on the roof. As a 9-year-old, I have no reference points of how far away this plant is. I just know that someone on the radio, which means this is truth, has said there were people blown up into the air at this plant, and they still haven't come down. And so I automatically started listening for them to come down. And I can remember the hair on the back of my neck coming up. And remember it's a stormy night. And a branch hits my roof and rolls down into the front yard. And I'm lying there wondering about this poor person in our front yard, or what part of their body was lying in our front yard. And I'm so terrified and so scared that I don't get up to go tell and ask my parents. And so I'm just lying there. And then it goes, we return you now back to the Houston Astros baseball. It goes right back to normal. And I'm listening to the baseball game, and there's someone's body part, half their, I don't know what, lying in the front yard. And so I can remember how terrifying that was. And I finally fell asleep, and then going out in the front yard the next day and looking for it, and then seeing that branch, and then putting it all together, and realizing how silly I had been, but how real it felt. And it occurred to me the other night thinking about that so often in my life, even today, I get information and I process it, and it comes out in a reality that may or may not be true. And until I get other information and other perspective, I can have a real distortion of what's real and what isn't. I had a child's point of view. It caused great fear and anxiety, and all I had to do was go talk to my parents about it, but I was too scared to do it. So I can't help believing this is a lesson that I learned then that will be helpful for me to remember each day now. I think, based on my experience working where I work and the people I've spoken to, rare is the person that I encounter that had a wonderful, healthy family upbringing. It just seems like families, by default, create all kind of disturbance and dysfunction and misinformation. Y'all are laughing because you agree? Is this your experience? My experience? I see a lot of people experience this. Okay. So, more personal disclosure. My family, I don't know where we were on the continuum of good mental, emotional health, but we weren't toward the best end, okay? Maybe, and I don't think we were at the worst. We were just kind of slogging along it and bouncing along on square wheels. We were just kind of somewhere, probably more on the side of dysfunction. My dad was a compulsive gambler, so this created all kind of tension and financial insecurity in our house. My mother was terribly codependent, okay, which is a combination that we tend to see happen when you've got addictive thought processes and behaviors in place. So in our house, my sister and I developed pretty finely tuned antenna to try to get a sense of which way the wind was blowing at any given time. Because for my dad, we didn't know anything about point spreads or over or unders. We just knew that there were Mondays where my dad was happy and it was fun and he's pulling quarters out of my ear and everybody loved my dad. There were other days where he was the guy behind the newspaper that was just a presence in the house and you didn't really talk to him. Now, I never made the connection, but when he was the guy behind the newspaper, there was a lot more noise coming out of the kitchen. Pots and pans were whacking and slapping around, and the kitchen was noisier. And so we learned that when the kitchen is noisy and Dad's behind the newspaper, you just lay low, right? And so I know now in my life that these are experiences that many of us have. We learn all these different little sounds and facial gestures and markers growing up as children to know when to lay low and when to try to make them laugh and when to try to look good and when to just disappear, right? Okay. Now, I tell my patients this story. It's not true, but it's factual. Or it's not fact, but it's truth. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. This is not a factual story I'm about to share with you, but it contains great truth, okay? So if in my house, the thing we always wanted to avoid with my dad was him lowering his glasses like this and going, Stan, come here. This is not a happy moment, okay? This is to be avoided at all costs. So I have firmly embedded in my mind as a kid, this is to be avoided at all costs. Now, I leave my family, and I go off to LSU, and I want to be a journalist. And remember, this is not fact, but it's truth. I want to be a journalist. And so I go to my first year journalism class. And the professor says, we're going to assign a paper so we can kind of get a sense of how well each of you write, because some of you may need to be remedial, go back and study some more. Some of you may be just right, and we might want to put some of you in the class that's a little more advanced. So take this assignment, go home and write, and come back. So we do that. And a week later, we're sitting in class. He goes, okay, I've got your papers back. And some of you did really well. Some of you need a little work, and we're going to assign you to this class. And Mr. Bumgarner, I'd like to talk to you after class. Okay. Right then, I'm thinking, what? This is not good. In fact, I'm an imposter. They finally found out that I have no business even being in school, and I'm a complete loser, and you know, it just goes all the way down to Chris Farley living in the van by the river. Right. This is how quickly it goes. And I wait after class, and I go up to him, and I'm scared, and he says, you know, it's rare, but we have on occasion students that we jump 2 classes ahead, and this is the best paper I've ever seen. Okay, what a difference. So I always emphasize with the people that I counsel, do not believe everything you think. Because I know from my own personal experience, I have carried so many distortions out of my family into the real world. And when a girlfriend is in the kitchen and she picks up the pot and it's hot and she drops it, it's not because she's mad. She just burned her hand. But if I process that through everything I experienced as a kid, I want to go, honey, what's wrong? What did I do? So again, I need to be real careful to remember not to believe everything that comes through as a thought for me. And this is so true of so much in my life. The things that I think have been taught by my parents and my culture about what constitutes success and how money interplays with success and contentment, and what clothing tells about another person, and what their car tells me about the other person. I know one of the things I've been guilty of, because I'm kind of a networker kind of guy. I want to introduce Barry, and I want to introduce Richard, and I want to introduce someone that they've never met. And I'll go, this is Barry. He works at Austin P, and he teaches creative writing there. Richard works with the city of Clarksville, because I'm just trying to give information about you so it'll be conversational. But I realize how important it is for me to know what you do. Somehow, knowing what you do gives me some reference points that I then judge, and I have this whole thought process around. And it can be so flawed and so wrong. My understandings can really distort the world for me. Also, my understanding of myself in relationship to other people can be really distorted. I'm not as important as I think I am. And it's an important lesson for me to remember every day. I think there's some part of us that feels like we are the center of the universe. I think that's just human, okay? And I think we grow when we realize we're not. But it's like the story of a guy who could not enjoy football games, going to the football games, because he'd go to the big stadium, and he said, I was so uncomfortable there because I was watching the game, and the players would throw the ball, or run the ball, and then they'd tackle, and they'd get all jumbled up on the line. The referees would blow the whistles, and they'd stop the game, and then everybody would get in these two little circles and start talking about me. So the world, as I view it, can be really distorted. I should not believe everything I think. And the more perspective I gain, the more accurate my perceptions are. The other day, I facilitated a retreat for our spiritual program at Cumberland Heights, and we had people from different departments there sharing with us what their experience was for the needs of our patients and how we could improve spiritual services for them. And one of the things that came up over and over and over from different people was, gosh, you know what? We meet so many people that come here with such unhealthy belief systems about religion. And we need to talk about the difference between being spiritual in life and being religious. And we need to figure out a way to do that. And we kind of teased it out. And we know some things that we want to try. But one of the things that came to mind was how people come in that are so rigid. I have a very difficult time when I've got patients and I'm teaching a spirituality group and there's someone on the front row that says something like, well, you don't believe in the devil? No, I don't. Well, you don't believe in heaven or hell? No, I don't. And I have to be really careful about how I interact with people like that, because they can be completely shut down and miss everything else. So people that come in with very rigid, I know what the answer is, because I was taught this as a kid and I grew up in it, and when I go to church on Sunday and know exactly how all this works, and I understand God, and I understand you, and I understand how you're supposed to be behaving, and I understand how the world is supposed to be, those are the ones that I have to be most wary with, because it's like a friend of mine said, they had to recognize and own that they're very intolerant of intolerant people. Okay? I have to own my intolerance of intolerant people, so I have to be aware, right? But the flip side of that person that's so rigid and has the answers, is the person that comes in that has either never been interested in having any kind of spiritual conversation at all, or, and I don't want to generalize, many of us, myself included, that were so deeply wounded by the religious experience that they had as children and growing up in their crazy family, that I don't want to hear anything about it. I mean, I just run as quickly as I can. If I hear the word spirituality, it equals religion, and so I don't want anything to do with it. And so I think we suffer from lack of having that conversation. And I love David Bowen's joke. I mean, this is fairly common, but for us Unitarian Universalists, if there's a line here that says, this way to heaven, and this way to coffee and discussion of heaven, we want to go to the coffee and discussion of heaven, right? So part of what I've had to do and work on, and I think it may be our challenge, is taking it out of here, taking it out of the intellectual component and moving it into here, into this very real spiritual connection that each of us can feel with each other, because I gained more accurate understanding of my reality, not on my own, but through interacting with other people and gaining perspective on the world around me and myself and my relationship to other people. If I can be aware that I have very distorted thought processes, that bumper sticker that says don't believe everything you think is accurate. If I can be aware of that and accept that I don't have all the answers, and in fact, real searching, spiritual searching in part is looking for answers, I can accept that I don't have them, and there may be something for me to learn, and then I take action to do something about it, amazing things may happen. And I gain perspective that I really need to have that's been missing in my life. But the only way that happens for me is that I be open-minded, that I not be intolerant of intolerant people, that I not reject spirituality because I've rejected religion, and that I be willing, with some open mind, that I be willing to learn.